How's it going, Vikings fans? Welcome back to the Skol Experience. Another week, another guest. Today we are joined by Luke Braun of Locked On NFL. Luke, how's it going tonight?
Hey there. Doing all right.
I'm pumped up after that intro, Casey. Let's go.
Of course.
Let's go.
We
got the guy who I cheated on all the way through high school and college in math class and English class. I found out the last time I had him on. Hey, thanks for showing up, Luke. We brought Luke on to talk about a lot of cap things. What would happen if we traded or if we just cut a guy? So he's short on time, so we got him for 30 minutes, and we're gonna make good on that. So let's get started, man. Let's go.
Let's jump in right away. Actually, I do want to know though a little bit. I don't know if you did this on Dave's show already, but I'm interested in just knowing quickly about like you becoming a Viking fan and that whole thing, like your journey as a Viking fan to,
sure.
You know, Luke Braun. I mean, you've definitely grown, like you grew into somebody in this Viking circle, a pretty popular guy for sure. So it'd be interesting to know a little bit more about you on that. And
He's
how
Twitter famous.
Twitter famous, whatever. You're
culturally
really good podcast. Everything.
He's won awards.
You see. Yeah, you do. You got. You
thank
you.
You got the Dustin Baker Hall of Fame awards.
Yeah. You did like almost
Dusty
like
Baker
half
awards.
of them.
I grew up a Vikings fan. I grew up in Minnesota, so born and raised bleeding purple. Moved to Los Angeles for college, and I've lived out here for adulthood, but I still cover the team from afar. I started covering them in 2016 for a guy that Dusty and I both knew very well, Joe Johnson. He had a website called Purple PTSD and later bought Vikings Territory. Joe and I started really from kind of the ground up together from like Reddit. We just met on Vikings Reddit, and he said, I'm looking for people. I'm going to make a blog site. Who wants to write? And I had some extra time and kind of felt like it. So, all right, I'll do this. Let's go. Wrote for him for a couple of years. And then in 2018, Locked On reached out to me and said, we're looking for someone to take over Locked On Vikings. They had previously, Locked On Vikings was hosted by Sam Ekstrom, who does a lot of stuff with Locked On elsewhere. And then after that, for a hot second, it was actually Jordan Reed, the guy who does draft for like college, a lot of college draft scouting stuff for ESPN now, I believe. He really blew up. So there was a vacancy. They reached out to me. I said, let's do it. I've been doing Locked On Vikings ever since, and Locked On has been kind of the vessel through which all the rest of the growth has happened. I'm now this next season will be my fifth, if you count 2018, although I joined like 3 games before the end of the season there, so maybe you shouldn't. So maybe my 4th year.
We'll count it.
We'll count it.
Or no, it would be my 5th because 19, 20, 21, 22. Yeah. No.
So we'll say 6 then.
Yeah.
We'll go there.
Perfect. 6. All right, so we'll do a little shout outs here. I am the life. Hello. How's it all going? It's going pretty good over here. Dave Thibodeau, Skol,
hey, what's up, Dave?
Raven Hoagland, Skol, everyone. I lived here in Minnesota my whole life, so I rep Minnesota sports. Yeah, it's pretty much how it works for most of us because I don't know. Minnesota is one of those teams. Not a lot of people just choose them. You kind of just born with them and then deal with it, I guess.
But I've noticed unless you're me, you move away from the state, but still.
Yeah, you move away from the state, but you still stay a fan. Pretty much every single podcaster we have on here is not actually living in Minnesota right now, besides Casey. What's going on, Skol?
Yeah, we got the corners covered, man. He's in California. I'm in Florida. We can't be farther away from each other unless he was in Hawaii or Alaska.
We are giving away an Alexander PSA 10 rookie card. Dave from Minnesota Sports Talk, right below me, is having his Alexander Madison's dad on his podcast tomorrow. So for him, so go check that out. Go subscribe to him. Go subscribe to us at GG Sports Podcast, and of course, Locked On Vikings with Luke Braun. Hashtag Skol in the chat, guys. Hashtag Skol to have a chance at winning this card. All right, let's jump into what we're here for.
And make sure you hit like on this, so push this video.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, guys.
All right.
So Casey.
So let me explain what I put up here. 2018, Brian Flores was the de facto D corner because he was calling the plays. From what I understand in New England, you can correct me if I'm wrong on that. 2019, he took over. 2019 he took over as a head coach, but from what I've read from old, Googling old articles, he had his D coordinator taking over the play calling. I do not know exactly what happened in 2020, but I'm hoping that's him taking over the defense after the first year didn't go so good. And then I think in 2021, the defensive coordinator that got fired last year was the D coordinator in 2021. Or this year, the guy that got fired this year was the D coordinator last year also. So I know you're a big fan of Brian Flores. These numbers are a little up and down. Tell us about why you like him, man. There's some things I like him, but I'd rather hear from you.
Yeah.
So the thing to remember about 2019 is that was the tank year for Miami. That was the year in question where Stephen Ross was asking him to tank and saying, I'll give you $100,000 if you tank and if you lose on purpose and stuff. That was the year they traded away Minka Fitzpatrick and they sort of tore it all down to the studs. So that is the go look at the Our Lads roster for 2019. You'll see there's only so much you can do there. For me, I would, instead of just looking at, okay, how did his defenses do? Because there's so much that goes into that roster, strength of opponent, stuff like that. And once you're done adjusting for all that, you've introduced so much noise that it's not even going to be that useful. So for me, I like to look at, okay, what is he going to try to do here? And how do I feel like that fits with who we have? And I like that it's aggressive, right? If you were somebody who thought, in 2022, if you ever had the thought, my goodness, they're playing off coverage every play. Holy crap, this zone is so soft. Everybody is carving it up. This is about as opposite of that as you could possibly get. Like this is, if you were like, my goodness, they didn't change anything about the defense. They have changed the defense. This is so different. It's man coverage all the way down. It's cover zero. It's blitzing all the time. He's a psycho.
Blitzing all the time.
Incredibly aggressive. Maybe to a fault. And if there are times where this defense falls apart, it will be because the offense was able to counter those blitzes. And if they are able to counter those blitzes or pick up those blitzes, you're in a lot of trouble. And if you don't have the corners, because when you're blitzing, guys are on an island. They got to play man coverage. If you don't have the corners, you're going to have some trouble as well, which is what happened to the Dolphins in 2019. So if you want to be a negative Nancy, the argument has to be, well, now they're going to blitz a whole bunch and we're going to watch, Andrew Booth get dusted unless they get a million corners.
Yeah. That's a good point. And that's another thing with Flores that I'm interested in is, going before we grab him, and we're going to go into some of these players in a little bit here, but I think a lot of people were just wondering about our vets and are we going to keep some of our vets? Are we going to let them go? Should we extend Danielle Hunter? What should we do with Danielle Hunter? What should we do with Zadarius Smith? Depending on if they're 3-4 or 4-3, do we keep Zadarius Smith if it's 3-4, but if we're 4-3, do we keep Danielle Hunter? But now with a guy, do you think, like with a guy like Flores, who's just all about the blitz, and it's a different scheme than Ed Donatell's scheme, even if it's 3-4, do you think that will benefit guys like Danielle Hunter and Zadarius Smith, and the whole 3-4 and Danielle Hunter not being a 3-4 player is going to matter as much?
Yeah, so as a 3-4, in the sense that Brian Flores' defense is a 3-4, it'll be fine. That's mostly about the alignments in the fronts and stuff.
Right.
But the thing that Danielle Hunter had I think the most trouble with was rushing from a 2-point stance and backing off into coverage occasionally and needing to threaten that he'll back off into coverage to make the pressure packages harder to read. And that didn't work out great for him. Now, he did end up, I think, top 10 in pressures by the end of the year. So he figured it out.
Right.
But Brian Flores doesn't do that part. So it is odd spacing in his fronts, which has interesting implications if you really want to go into the weeds with it. But it's not going to ask Danielle Hunter to really go outside his skill set as much as Donatell did. Yeah. So that could bode well for him. Yeah. If that's the kind of thing you're asking. The real difference here is man match versus zone match.
Okay.
Zone match is the Fangio, the Donatell thing. And it required a lot more reading, a lot more kind of, it was less it was less an if then and more a kind of read the whole play thing, which when it's working can give you a lot more flexibility. But for guys like Kendricks or Harrison Smith, they weren't used to that style of reading and it was slow. So they were slow to break on stuff. And when you're slow to break on stuff, you're taught back off it then and keep it in front of you. And yeah, you'll give up the catch, but you'll at least be able to make the tackle. It won't be a long touchdown. But then that meant that they were backing off and letting a whole bunch of catches happen because they were slow to react to everything. And every team could attack that the exact same way. And it was way too easy to attack. They're going back to man match, which is what Zimmer taught. So these guys are going back to the style of reading and the style, I guess the thought tree, the thought processes that they had for 8 years. They should be a lot more used to that. And then you just hope that they can get that the extra blitzing and the extra kind of cover one extra man coverage part works better than some of those Zimmer defenses did at the end, which had their own host of problems. You hope that stuff doesn't repeat itself.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I agree with you on all that stuff. So it'll be interesting. So we'll move on here because we'll actually dive into a lot of these vets players and kind of get your opinion on I mean, obviously their cap situation and what we should do with those specific players. Starting with Adam Thielen. I know Dave wanted to kind of jump into this.
Yeah, I brought up all the numbers because I think this is a perfect example of how something would be affected. Because like 2025, would that be considered a void year?
Yes.
Okay, so right? if we were to cut him right here, what would we be responsible for?
So if you release Adam Thielen right now, you can go to overthecap.com/calculator.
This is from there. Okay.
Yeah, and
go ahead.
Like if people want to follow along or whatever, they can go to that and it'll help you kind of see it. But if you cut him right now, none of his base salary is guaranteed. So all that salary just goes away. He doesn't see it. The prorated bonus part of his cap hit all would accelerate. So that dead money number, that 13.5 million, is signing bonus money or restructured money that the Vikings have already given to Adam Thielen that then needs to be paid out to the salary cap. So the salary cap has not collected it yet, but the physical money has been paid, and that's why it's dead money because you already gave it out. So the cap has to collect eventually. For a better or a more thought out explainer of this, go to patreon.com/LukeBraunNFL. There's a salary cap explainer for all of that stuff. And I did an episode of Locked On Vikings on Monday about Adam Thielen specifically, because that dead money hit, that 13.5 is really big, but that's because 3 years worth of bonus are all accelerating at once. And so you're paying 3 years worth of that category of money at one time. So that's going to be a big lump sum of cash. Instead, you can look at the actual base salary that Adam Thielen is due to collect, which is $11.8 million. I rounded up to 12 for the thing. So $12 million. And think about what he'll make on the open market. Now, this is subjective. I went with 4 mil because of some previous contracts, but if you think it's more like 5 or 6, go with that. Whatever you think he'll make on the open market, and you can say, well, what if we just paid you that then? Instead of cutting you and making you go through this whole negotiation, and maybe you don't get signed till June and it's stressful, we'll just give you 6 mil. And we'll keep you on your current contract. We'll just reduce your salary to 6 mil instead of the 12 mil. We can't do the 12 mil, but we can do 6. And now suddenly you've saved 6.5 million, could be up to 8 million, depending on what he thinks he's going to get, without accelerating any dead money, without kicking any can down the road, just by leveraging the economics of the situation. And if Adam Thielen is acting perfectly rationally, which is not a guarantee because players are emotional and maybe they won't like being approached about a pay cut.
Right.
But if he's acting in the perfect logician economics way, he will say, okay, if I think I'll get 4 million in the open market, but you're offering me 6, I take the 6. And now you've gotten him to agree to a pay cut, not out of the kindness of his heart, but out of a sense of self-preservation, which is all fair and rational and cold and calculated numbers, economic stuff. That's to say nothing about the interpersonal factor of asking a guy, but
right.
So that's what I think can happen with Adam Thielen. And also Harrison Smith is in a very similar spot this year.
Yeah, right. I don't have them on this list because I told you I was going to have about 4 or 5 players, so I didn't have to milk you dry of all your knowledge, but we could probably move on to the next one.
I do have so with Adam Thielen, another thing with him as far as or if we were going to pay him 6 million a year, 4 to 6 million a year, I'm assuming he'll also care a lot about his usage rate, especially obviously we've seen how he felt last year. And assuming, I know a lot of fans are kind of hoping we go a different direction for a wide receiver 2 and even wide receiver 3 potentially. So do you think that's something that you would want us to do, is have Adam Thielen on this squad next year, even at 6 million a year?
I think at 6 million a year, that would still be a pretty good deal for Adam Thielen. And that's 6 million of base salary. His actual cap hit would be closer to like 11 because there's still prorated bonus stuff going on. But I think that would be a better deal for him. And yes, I still think he's at least good enough to be a wide receiver too. If you think of a guy like Alan Lazard as a wide receiver too, Brad Spielberger, who's really good at predicting contracts, predicted about 11 million for Alan Lazard. So we're paying him Alan Lazard money. I think that's pretty amenable.
Paying a guy like Alan Lazard and still having the cap hit for cutting Thielen, you got like a $20 million receiver.
Yeah,
and people got to think about that, right?
Right, exactly.
If you get rid of Adam Thielen to generate cap space, you're also creating a new need that's going to eat into that cap space, and you have to find a way that's not going to be.
You'd almost want to go draft.
Probably, yes.
Or Jalen Naylor will live up to my expectations of him. We had that
wide receiver 1B, Jalen Naylor. Let's go. All right, Eric Kendricks. So obviously this one is a little bit, as far as like a cutting situation goes, it's a little bit more obvious, probably compared to any of the other vets that we have on here. What are you thinking, or what's your thoughts on Eric Kendricks and his cap situation and everything?
Yeah, so this is the one that has been the hardest for me to figure out because everything seems like a decent idea. Like I don't know if there's a bad idea here. You could cut him, or if you can find a trade partner, trade him, and the money works out the same there. I think Eric Kendricks for $9.5 million is something that teams would be interested in, and interested in giving you real draft capital for. This is not dumping him for a 7th round pick. I think you'd actually get something back for him. So I think that's an option. Or if you just wanted to release him I think you could probably get, you have Brian Asamoah, who they really, really like. You're probably releasing Jordan Hicks as well. So you would need another linebacker there.
Right.
I would release Hicks before I release Kendricks if you're choosing one. Like, I think that's pretty easy. You could also, I don't know, 11.5 for Eric Kendricks isn't the worst deal. I think 9.5 is a really good deal, which is why I think you can get away with selling it. But also, if you want Eric Kendricks to stay in Minnesota and retire a Viking, I think that's a decent idea too. And you can work out an extension with him that would also, you could structure it to get that cap hit down sort of artificially by extending him through future years. I think all of it kind of makes sense. And it depends on if you think Eric Kendricks will be able to thrive or not in a Brian Flores system. I think this would be better for him than the Fangio system was. I think he struggled a lot in the Fangio system.
Who didn't?
But yeah, no bad ideas here. No bad ideas here.
Right.
Well, so you're kind of more on the side that maybe we a lot of our guys played slow because of the defense. You know, the confusion, not knowing their assignment.
Yes. I think that was. I don't think Eric Kendricks randomly became a bad player overnight.
Yeah, I felt the same way. And one of the things I looked at, and I think we may have talked about this, is that if you get rid of both Woods and Kendricks, you just have Asamoah and die. You know, so it's like
Asamoah and a need, and
a need. You're right.
And then, exactly. And then you're trying to, I'm not convinced that you're going to get another linebacker that's going to be as good as Eric Kendricks next year in free agency or the draft or anything like that. So I do think it's a hard situation to let Hicks and Eric Kendricks both go this offseason.
A little uncomfortable. Yeah. But I think you just would have a need, but the money you would save from releasing those guys would probably you would be able to address that need and then some. So you could do it efficiently, although then you run the risk of what if that free agent busts out, or what if you miss out on the bidding where you wanted, or, and so there's definitely downsides. I'm very agnostic about this one.
Right. Definitely.
But a little bit of other Minnesota sports news. The D'Angelo Russell trade is happening. He's going to the Lakers along with Malik Beasley and Jared Vanderbilt. Utah gets Russell Westbrook, Juan Toscano-Anderson, Damian Jones, and a first rounder. The Wolves get Connolly, Nickeil Alexander-Walker, and 3 second-round picks.
Ooh.
As reported by, it was a Washbaum. So other Minnesota sports news to interject in the Vikings news here, but yeah.
Get your hot Timberwolves news here on the Skol Experience.
Dude, I like that. That's not a bad trade.
I have no idea about any of those players, so I'm going to have to read up after the show.
Yeah.
They just might have.
You Laker killed it. All right, let's jump back into this, though. So we got some chats here. Thielen needs to take a huge pay cut. If not, he needs to be
You're covering Luke Braun's face. There you go.
Oh, my bad. There are reports that Thielen isn't looking for a payday cut. Trade veterans for draft picks. I really wish the Vikings would trade anyone and everyone they can to build draft capital. Trade Cook for 2 late second-round picks. Trade Smith for 2 third-round picks. We'll come back to some of these questions. I really wish the Vikings could trade anyone and everyone they can to build capital. Kendrick's gone. We talked about that.
Be the Bears.
What's going on? Skol. Cut or trade Kendricks. And
wow, the chat
Purple Mob. Let's go. Yeah, we missed a bunch here. I just want to say one more time before moving forward that we are giving away, wrong person. We are giving away this Alexander Madison rookie card. Hashtag Skol in the comments for your chance to win. All we ask is for you to subscribe to our channels, GG Sports Podcast, Locked On the NFL, and Minnesota Sports Talk. Let's go in this and continue on here.
And to be specific, it's Locked On Vikings,
right? Locked On Vikings. Yeah, no, I was confused for a second just because you have NFL on your thing. But Locked On Vikings, right, Luke?
Yes, Locked On Vikings.
Locked On Vikings. Gotcha. All right, let's keep moving here. Delvin Cook. So this is a situation that Casey has a strong opinion on. Casey, do you want to give your opinion and then have Luke give his?
I don't know. I'm kind of over Delvin Cook. That's just my personal opinion on the matter. It's about even if you cut him. So
what do you think, Luke?
So when I did the off season, I did like a mock off season thing for an article, and for a podcast, and I cut Dalvin Cook in it. It's another one where I think cut him is okay. I don't think keeping him on 14 million is okay.
Yeah.
You might be able to find a trade partner for him. It kind of depends on how other running backs shake out on the free agent market, who gets franchise tagged and stuff, with like Tony Pollard and Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs, all those guys hitting the market. That's a little bit spooky for somebody trying to trade a running back. But if those guys stay in their original teams or however it plays out, you might be able to find a Dalvin Cook trade partner. But this feels like a fairly cuttable contract. Yeah. And you just have, it's also the McVay system is, I think, a lot more comfortable with running back by committee than and it doesn't really need like a bell cow, like the way Kubiak's ran it. Mm-hmm. Was really about like, you were running a lot in that, and you needed somebody that kind of got going, quote unquote, like Adrian Peterson would back in the day. And I think the McVay version of it is you kind of just run enough so that your play action has to be taken seriously. And that's about it. And for that, you don't need like a Derrick Henry bell cow. The Titans are another good example of like the wide zone that really goes through that running game rather than just kind of using it as a setup. So I guess I lean toward cutting him. I don't think he is going to take, well, it's already reported that he's not going to take a pay cut, but it doesn't make sense for him to take a pay cut because he could make his base salary back on the open market. So he could say, nah, I'm not taking that lesser salary. I'll take my chances. And I think he's got a better chance to make money than on the open market than he would on a reduced salary with Minnesota. I think the best case scenario is getting draft capital back and trading him. But as a cut, I think it is feasible for sure.
Because 14 million for a running back, if we had to pay that, that's pretty high number for that position. Yeah, especially like you said, if we are not even using him to the best of his ability anymore.
And 6.2 dead is not much. Right. In a cap environment where you have 225 million on the cap, 6.2 is fine.
And we need to come down 20 million about, I think. Something like that.
Something like that.
We may have to go into speed round.
Let's go.
Luke's got like 7 minutes left.
This is an
easy cut for me. It doesn't. The it's not about the money. The money's fine. Saving 5 mil is great, but it's more about Brian Asamoah was already eating into his snap counts. I think the writing's on the wall.
Yeah.
I didn't think you'd have to take too long on this one.
Yeah, we're feeling Asamoah here, so I think it's time to kind of see.
And this is not getting rid of veterans to get younger. Well, I guess it is. This is the good version of younger and cheaper, but you want to have the younger, cheaper guy already in and ready to take over, and he is.
Right. Yep, exactly. Ooh, this one,
too close to home.
This one hurts the soul.
Jamie graduated. Jamie graduated with him in high school, so.
Oh, so I say we can have we can do the Chandler Keeney thing, and then we just keep a fullback. Why not?
Yeah. And it's really more about, do the Vikings want to be a 21 personnel team or not? If they had CJ Ham, so okay, we'll do 21 personnel, we'll do 2 back stuff, we'll do lead back stuff. But do they want to be that team? And based on everywhere else Kevin O'Connell has been, I don't think he's ever wanted to be that team. So I think this. I think he's getting cut. But again, I mean, if you want to keep the kind of Shanahan pages of the playbook, the steal their use check plays, like go for it. It's 3.8 million or 3 million in savings is fairly small potatoes in the grand scheme of things. For maybe we get a whole new package that just stresses defenses that much more. But for my money, I don't see it happening. I don't think Kevin O'Connell wants to be that kind of team, so I'm cutting him.
But yeah, and then we have to remember he's captain of special teams too, so keep that in mind. Keep that
usurped by Josh Metellus.
I don't know what Rap's thinking here. Purple Pocket Podcast. Y'all leave Cook alone.
Oh yeah.
I know because he wants to keep him. That's right.
Keep Cook
on the right. Kirk Cousins. Yeah. Oh wait.
Well, we'll get to Kirk.
We don't have time.
We're getting to Kirk.
We're on the time
eat the 50 million dead. Let's go.
Yeah.
Here we go. I think you're on the side of keeping him now that we got a new D coordinator, right?
Yes, because his cap hit is, I believe, 22nd highest among edge rushers, and he was a top 10 edge rusher, no matter how you slice it in the league. It's just a very good deal. And if anything, Zadarius Smith should come to the table wanting more money. When you have an efficient deal like this, yeah, you could save almost 14 mil doing it, but I don't think that 14 mil can get you more than Zadarius Smith coming back would get you.
Yeah, I've changed my mind on this after I found out who we hired. I thought this would be also a pretty good contract that we could trade, because I was all about accumulating picks for 2024 to get a quarterback under, Kirk Cousins, and we'll talk about him later. But yeah, I'm feeling like we're keeping him. So then the next guy we got coming up, Daniil Hunter. I think you're on board of even extending him, if I'm not mistaken.
I am.
Well, if you want to get that cap hit down, you can extend him. And also that means you keep Daniil Hunter for more years, which is good. He's a good player. We should want good players to stay on the team long-term. That's how you build for a future, right? For everybody who's freaking out about them going all in and then their future falls apart, we'll keep the good players for the future, and then you have a future.
Right.
But yeah, cutting him is not feasible. Even if you do the post June 1st thing, you can spread the pain out a little bit more, but it's still very, very inefficient to do that. And why would you want to? He's a very good football player who's good at playing football.
For a 28-year-old pass rusher, and I would say elite pass rusher for sure. You're not going to find those guys in everywhere, especially you bring a guy who is in Flores, who specializes in blitzing. It's probably not a good idea to get rid of your best pass rushers.
But I would just like to see how he's going to fit into the scheme, though, before, I mean, I love Daniil Hunter if he can, do what he's shown us in the past, but it all depends on the scheme fit.
Really hard to imagine it not fitting. The way that Brian Flores does it, you put his hand in the dirt, put him up against a tackle, and he probably gets to enjoy one-on-ones all day, especially if he's stunting and looping. But for perspective, if you add the possible saved money of cutting Zadarius Smith and Daniil Hunter, like the two of them combined, you would not be able to afford any of the top 5 edge rushing contracts. These guys combined, the two of them. These guys are bargains, and to the point where they should be asking questions of their agents, I think.
Rap, by the way, I'm going on record saying I don't want to blow it all up. I'm okay with getting rid of some of the higher price veterans at certain positions on defense. And Daniil Hunter isn't one of them. We can find a way to keep
first number. This first number is for guys like Too Evil to Hope who want to cut Kirk Cousins. We're not going to cut a $48 million cap hit. What does an extension look? Because honestly, I think most people agree that they're probably going to at least extend him 1 year. What does an extension look like, and what could we do with that extension to maybe save some money on this year?
Sure. So you can do the same move that you did last year, basically, where you give him an extra year, maybe an extra void year to help spread out cap hit, convert some So he's got a $20 million roster bonus that has already become guaranteed. You could turn that into a signing bonus, though, to spread it out. Do some stuff like that, get his cap hit down. However, if you were so inclined, and if you're one of the people who wants to be out of Kirk Cousins, if you want a smooth exit strategy to get away from Kirk Cousins, Right now, he is slated to have the 6th highest cap hit in 2023, and there are some major QB extensions on the horizon and some big money kicking in from extensions like Patrick Mahomes's and stuff that contributes to that. So there's some major money out there coming down the pipe for quarterbacks. 36 mil, I think, is his cap hit in 2023. Is actually not that crazy of a deal. That's about what Daniel Jones is going to make on average. So doing nothing with Kirk Cousins is 100% a feasible option. He plays on a contract year. He voids out in 2024 and he goes. If you are anti-Cousins, that's probably the scenario you should be rooting for. If you're pro-Cousins and you want to extend him, we can get this cap hit down. Absolutely, with signing bonus stuff, moving money around. Easy peasy. I think trading him is not really an option, both because of the no trade clause, and there's nothing really pointing to Kirk Cousins like wanting out of Minnesota. So why would he go with the no trade clause? Like, why would he ever waive it? Also, I just don't see the Vikings doing that and going into QB hell, or trying to take their chances in the draft or whatever. There's a lot of reasons for it not to make sense, and you have to ignore quite a bit of stuff to project that forward.
Yeah. So what are you thinking? What do you want? Do you want that one, have him finish out his year, or
I think he's earned a year? He had a good year this year. I think the way he played in that playoff game, especially the way he played in games like against Buffalo, second half against the Colts, kind of the defining moments of the season. I think he's earned another year extension, and let's revisit this question this time in 2024.
And we just got one last one with you. Just kind of an idea of a player that, signed his first big contract, and then, where are we going to look for some cap room? Is this a restructure candidate with Brian O'Neill?
You could save, let me pull it up right quick. You can save a lot of money, 10 million, just by restructuring his contract. Now that is smart
because I did that on my video. I put 10 million for this guy.
Nice.
Nice.
So that is kicking cap down the road. That's kicking money down the road. But the thing you have to remember about kicking money down the road is that the cap goes up every year. So $1 million this year is going to be a bigger burden than $1 million next year. So moving that money down the road sort of makes it a diminishing pain, if you will. Which is why these restructures are such popular ideas, and it's part of why I'm such a big fan of them. It's not the pay cut thing like what I said with Adam Thielen about, this is we can still just pay you more than you would get on the open market, but that's less than your current salary. No, this is, you got to pay off that money later. There'll be dead cap and prorated bonus, and you'll have that issue with Brian O'Neill in 3 years, but you'll also have a cap of $300 million in 3 years, and it'll be that much easier to deal with.
Well, hey, man, I appreciate you coming on. I know you had a time constraint, and it was great. I would love to. Of course, everybody would love 100%. To have you back on again, and we're avid watchers of your show. So, of
course,
100%.
Thanks for watching
all the cap insight that I had no idea about.
I gotta watch the Beans video then. Go patreon.com/LukeBraun NFL. It's all free. It's paused.
Casey just goes on there to watch the commercials with your rabbits. It's
exactly.
He's a big wildlife fan.
Exactly. Yeah, there you go. The rabbits are in the salary cap video as well.
Do you have names for them before you leave? Do you have names for your rabbits? Go ahead. Tell us.
The gray one is the boy. He's Zeddy. The brown one is the girl. She is Zoe.
Nice.
Zeddy and Zoe.
Mm-hmm.
Cool.
Perfect.
Heck yeah.
But all right, man. Thanks for showing up, man.
But yeah, thank you so much, man. Definitely come back around. You obviously have some fantastic knowledge.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, man. We could definitely use that on our show more often. So,
yeah, we got 3 dummies here.
Don't tell us too short, Jimmy.
We're trying to learn. I mean, this is like a year in advance. It's got to take a good couple of years to understand cap stuff,
Yeah, for sure. Learning is not an overnight process. With anything.
All right, man. Thank you.
Cheers.
All right.
We good?
Are you gonna kick him out?